Hello. Okay, I got another one. Yay. Sam, could you do me a favor? Let me close the door here. The submission that you turned into the Dropbox gives me this server error, blah, blah, blah. Do you still have a electronic copy of what you did that you could just email to me?
Yeah, I could email it.
Okay. I'm not going to try to. Well, if you just integrated it into the Dropbox, I think it didn't work. If you put it in as an attachment and uploaded an attachment, then it worked. I have the same thing. Alex Stearns, do you have an electronic version of what you submitted? Because you and Sam, the way you did it, you don't use the attachments, which generally was fine. Previously was fine.
What I do is I do the assignment on Google Docs, and then I copy and paste it into the Dropbox.
Yeah, but so you don't do it as an attachment. And for some reason, it didn't like what you did. So if you want to just share your Google Doc with me, that's fine. But I would like you to try to put it, just copy just do save a copy all and create a document. Because if I'm going to make comments in the grade book, then it's tidier, like it's all in one place. But for the short term, if you just want to put it as, just save it with me, and then I can get it that way, because I was going to use some of those questions today. And Alex, can you do the same thing?
Yeah.
That makes sense? Okay, thank you very much. All right, before I hook up my computer, let me grab those two then. Close that. Great, thank you. Maddie, yours is all good. What am I looking at? I want to go back to this. And author. Let me just get these questions added to today's discussion, then we can get rolling. Hopefully we're not too long today, because I know you all have a lot to do. And I still have to print out my final too. Okay. Good. One of your questions was the same as one of my questions. All right, let me just grab those out of my email, and then we'll be ready to go, I hope. Okay. One more refresh. Okay, well, we'll get that later. All righty, so hello, everybody. I don't know what's up with Nick, but he may be just absent today. Jasmine is out. Did she just step out of the room?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Okay, so everybody else is here. All right, did Alex, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, I was looking back over this and I realized, because people were saying that they had turned it in, I thought that this assignment was due tonight, because I thought that we were going to talk about it on Wednesday and finish the structure or
okay.
So
if you could just load it up by tonight, that's fine, okay? I have enough questions to guide our discussion today, and just load yours up by tonight then, okay? All right. Okay, dib. All right, I think I need to start sharing this stuff. Let me get on course. Oh, save changes. That's probably where Nick is finishing his homework too. Course. There we go. Okay, so what we're going to do today is just kind of share the feedback from the reading. And I'm not going to give you an assignment. I'll give you an assignment on Wednesday to be turned in probably the end of the first week in January. So if for some reason you're traveling over the holidays or whatever, you'll still have some school time to get the assignment done. But if you want to get it done out of the way and come back to school time with one less thing to do, then so it'll be your choice. Fair enough? Make sense? Okay. And that assignment is going to be, I haven't written it out because I kind of wanted to see how things went today, but it's going to be to go back and revisit a case or a media. We'll list some possibilities to give you sort of a menu there, but to go back to a case that we've studied before or a media source that we've looked at before, and to talk about to dig into the risks of relativism in that other, sort of revisit analysis of a case, and sort of uncover where relativism could be a problem. And then where we're heading when we come back, and we may start a little bit of this on Wednesday. I'm not sure how much I want to start a new thing before we take 2 weeks off. But we're going to go into a series of sort of formal logic. And I guess I also wanted to find out how many of you have taken any philosophy class or math. It might even have been like a math special topic. So Jasmine, you've done that?
Well,
and Brittany, you have?
At our school, the geometry teacher basically turns geometry into a philosophy class. So.
Okay. So, and Brittany, you're smiling too. So, I mean, it might mean that this is really easy for you, and I'll try to think of, you probably won't have seen all of the examples. Do you remember if you used any of the materials from the Annenberg Center? Does that sound at all familiar to you? Brittany, no. Do you guys remember, did the geometry teacher use stuff from Annenberg? Do you know? That doesn't, I mean, she may have, and you might not, or he or she, you just might not have known it. But anyway, so it'll be new materials, but it maybe will be easy for you. Maybe we'll have to pair people up who have like expertise with people who don't, and make you do like a parallel thing or something. We'll figure that out. Okay, that's good to know. And I know Nick has done some stuff with this in summer school, so that's pretty good. We'll have half and half. Okay, so the point for today, here we go, for discussion on Monday, 12:15. Good luck on all your midterms this week. We'll try to get you out of here so you can study a lot tonight. First, I wanted to go through this idea of some of these concepts like objective versus subjective. I think we hit on that last lesson. But how about teleological? And in fact, that was somebody's question here. What is teleological theory? So what does it mean to be teleological? Where are the telomeres in chromosomes? Where does telophase come in mitosis? At the, I don't know what happens if everybody talks at once. At the end, yes. So it's to use the ends to explain something because of the end product or the end goal. So why are the example that, like, if you'll see like a simple textbook example, why is a knife sharp? So that it can cut. Why is it's especially used in evolution mistakenly, right? We don't have opposable thumbs so that we can grip pencils. It's not like the opposable thumb was like, we need to grip a pencil, so we'll develop an opposable thumb. It's we happen to have opposable thumbs, and therefore gripping pencils is possible, right? So teleological is problematic in an argument where you're explaining why something came about, and you're saying, well, it came about in order to have this end result. Because the coming about had to happen before the end result. Can I see if I'm making sense? Can I get some requests for questions or anything? Make sense? Good. Jasmine?
Okay, so wait. So the knife example would be like a pretty good pure teleological thing, right? Because you actually create the knife to get to that end. But evolutionary-wise, it's weird teleologically because you don't create the thing to get the end. It just happens that you get the end. Right.
So engineering, So teleological is engineering is valid to be teleological, right? In engineering, you're designing something to accomplish it.
Okay.
But evolution is not engineering, right? This is like the difference between natural selection and genetic engineering, right? Is that one has a foresight of a need, and the other one really has no foresight. It's just happening. Go ahead.
So wait, so does teleological include things like evolution, or does it exclude stuff like that?
How is the best way to put it?
Teleological,
it's the opposite. Teleological is not a good mechanism. It's not a good explanation of evolutionary mechanism.
Okay.
It is a false explanation of evolutionary mechanism, whereas teleological is a valid explanation of engineering. Fair enough? Okay. All right. And this is like, as a scientist, I have to remind myself sometimes the difference between social and cultural. I mean, I think that there is an intuitive sense of this, but sometimes we flip the words around. Feel free to do a quick wiki check or something if you want, or talk to you can't really talk to each other unless we're in Adobe Connect, and I don't want to bother to go to that right now, but So what's social? Let's start with one. What does social imply? The inclusion of what? Or the presence of what? Brittany?
Just other people, between people.
So it's a group, right?
Yeah.
It's not an individual. So really, individual versus social, that next one, that's the real dichotomy. But social versus cultural, social just means that you have multiple, there is an interaction between people. Cultural is, well, what does it mean? When we say something is a cultural impact or has a cultural impact or is resulting from a cultural influence. Mm-hmm. Jasmine?
Maybe stuff like Western individual, like, what's the word? Individualization. Independence versus like Western, they have more like group activity and like, or maybe like what would be better examples, like care of the elderly, for example. Like in Western culture, it's like more likely you put your elderly into a nursing home, while in some Eastern culture, it's more likely that you just care for them at home. So that's more cultural. So.
Good. Okay, so it's a behavior or a norm, right, that reflects that group of people, right? Yeah. So, and is it possible then to talk about an individual culture? What do you think of that? Do you think that's an appropriate use of that term? Go ahead, Jasmine.
Because a lot of Western culture is like, I mean, like about like capitalism and about like the pursuit of the individual dream and like what the individual can do for themselves. But a lot of times in Eastern culture and like a lot of times like especially like in Africa, for example, it's about things about like community and about like group effort. So I think it still is a cultural thing, even though it is on an individual scale, because the culture promotes that.
Okay, but the whole group, the whole social collection is conforming or in agreement with the idea of individualism.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's not like my individualism, like my culture is individualism and your culture is individualism and your culture is, so it's still a shared norm, even though the object of it is the individual. So it's that, you're right, that makes it a little confusing, but it's still something that is evolved from the group. Hence the difference between like Western and, as you say, like a more community-based culture. Now, so when we talk about society and culture, how about that? Are those interchangeable? And these words are used kind of, I mean, a lot of people use, I'd like to know like how we want to use them. Society versus culture. You gotta sit on your hand, Jasmine. Come on, guys. Sam.
I think that society can just be people living together. They don't have to have anything in common. But cultural, there's a bit more of a common thinking to it.
So culture may be one feature of a society. Go ahead, Maddie.
I was kind of thinking like maybe social, maybe like more of a present kind of idea, whereas cultural might be something like values based on traditions and history. I don't know if that makes sense, but
okay.
I feel like social is more of like a present, like modern kind of thing, whereas culture might be just like the history of a group or something like that.
Okay, so culture implies a background, a context, some background. And it could be, obviously a shared background is going to lead maybe to some shared concepts. All right. All right. So, and then finally, values and morals. Can we have a revisit on those? You can look back over old notes. You can scan up to the earlier part of the class where we looked up here. Values, morals, ethics. What was the difference? Can we remind ourselves about what are the two that I chose here? Values and morals. Go ahead, Maddie.
Values was kind of like the basis or like why you had certain morals, and then morals are a behavior, I think.
Okay, so morals are just tell you what you should do. Values are why you think you should do that. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think so.
And then ethics is how you came to that decision. And I'm doing a lot of paraphrasing here, so I'm happy to have you change my language.
That's pretty much right. I went back and read what it said. It says a systematic, rational way to work basically through your choices.
Right. So like how you got to that decision of what to do, and it presumably may reflect your value. Okay, if it's a values based. Okay. Okay. So that was just keep in mind that there are these. You're going to use these words, and these words have particular meaning as we go along. Okay. So here are some of your questions. And for each question, I want to hopefully sort of discuss an answer, but certainly talk about if there's what would be the additional information you would like to have, and then are there any conclusions or potential explanations? I mean, maybe it's premature to give an answer, but can you foresee the way explanations or conclusions may go? So some of you may recognize some of these questions. As I take in all of the rest of your inputs into the Dropbox, I will add to this list. We wouldn't necessarily discuss it all, but I'll put them all here just so we have a complete list. Because I think these may help you when you're doing your reanalysis to think, how can I flesh out this reanalysis? What is it about relativism that's pushing the limit, or that is potentially conflicting, or that makes it a little more complicated? Okay. So does moral relativism even matter within a culture if the laws determine what is socially acceptable anyway? So, is there anything you would need to look up or clarify? Would you like to have, this is like, you get that old show when they used to get their one phone call? So if you could ask something about this question, what would you ask about? Brittany?
So yeah, what I'd wonder is how much does the society's idea of what's acceptable coincide with the actual laws? So I don't know, my example is with speeding. The law says you do not speed, right? And but that doesn't necessarily mean that people don't speed. And if you tell someone you got a speeding ticket, I don't know, I don't think they really care that much. It's not like this huge big deal. Whereas the law says it is illegal. So I guess just because the law says it seems like it's kind of a little bit of a idealization of what they want the society to do and what they want the society to believe, not necessarily what the society actually believes.
Okay, so there's some complicated stuff going on in there. Maybe I'm just tired, but you guys need to help me here. The question seems to be going at if the laws determine, it's assuming, right? And this is where we're going to start doing this logical analysis thing, because we need to break this down. There seems to be an assumption in the question that laws do determine what is socially acceptable. Fair enough? So if that is the case, then do you really even need moral relativism, or is it a non-thing because the laws are there anyway? But now you've brought in this wrinkle, from what I'm hearing from you, Brittany, you've brought in this wrinkle that, well, there are some laws that even though it's a law, it's socially acceptable to break them. So it's kind of gotten complicated before my very eyes. Jasmine?
There might be a way to reword the question. I feel like if it was reworded does something being socially acceptable or moral relativism matter if laws change behavior, essentially? Because you're less likely to speed if there's a fine, right? So if a law changes your behavior to conform to it, does what is socially acceptable?
Say that again. Let me rewrite it. Does
does moral relativism or what is socially acceptable matter if laws change people's behavior anyways.
If laws do change people's behavior.
Yes, I mean, there's an assumption there as well that laws will change people's behavior, but I mean, I think on net, most people don't speed because they don't want to be fined for it, right? So.
Not around here. They speed anyway.
True.
Relativism. Okay. Okay, so does moral relativism, or what is socially acceptable, matter if, really should have taken typing in high school, if laws in fact do change people's behavior? So, I mean, I think what the question is really getting at is the power of a legal standard or norm as opposed to this other moral standard or norm. Is that fair to say? Maddie?
I don't know. I feel like even if a law, like Jasmine said, okay, if there's going to be a fine for speeding, then you're more than likely not going to speed. I feel like whatever kind of law there is, someone's going to disagree with it, or someone's going to break the law. So I feel like I don't know where I was going with that, but I feel like, I don't know. Let me think for a second. Sorry, I forgot what I was going to say.
So are laws impactful is what I'll write. And if anybody wants to change the language, I'm happy to do that. But I'm just trying to paraphrase what I'm hearing. Do laws have an impact, or are they impactful? I mean, I'm still kind of chewing on. Does anybody feel they could? Maybe we're rephrasing the question. Does anybody feel like they could answer the question or address it? Maybe not answer it, but address it well. Like, give me some, perhaps this, perhaps that. Brittany?
I think a problem with this is like that if the whole idea with relativism is that it depends on your situation, and that it just differs based on the society and whatnot. But then, and I think the whole idea is to get away from listening to an objective moral code. But if you put the laws in, then all you're doing is doing a objective moral code. So I think the answer is, if you're going to have laws that tell you what the code is, then within that culture, there is moral relativism is kind of a moot point. But when you're looking at multiple cultures where there are different laws, then the laws are kind of just reiterating, or might be reiterating, the morals of that culture, in which case it does matter because they're not really conflicting anymore. It's just kind of like the same thing is being expressed.
Okay. All right. So is that, how about, I tried to paraphrase. I liked what you said, or I could hear clarity in what you said about relativism is about getting away from an objective moral code. I like that. That has clarity to me. But within a culture, this may be moot because the laws offer that code. Alex?
I was going to say that I don't think that it is that laws are what are necessarily shaping morals. I think it's that laws come about because they're derived from morals coming up in the first place. Because if it suddenly wasn't illegal to kill someone, yeah, I'm sure murder rates would go up a bit, but the overwhelming majority would still find it wrong to kill another person. So I think it's just, laws are just what comes about when the majority of people in a given society would agree that something is morally wrong, rather than the laws themselves shaping what people think is morally wrong.
Interesting. Okay. So we've got this kind of two-way traffic. And and you're favoring one direction, and maybe it's just the way I was writing it here, but reflecting the more majority's opinion. I don't want to say opinions. What do I want to say? Majority's perspective. Maddie.
I think what I was trying to say was kind of what Brittany said, but she said it more clear.
Do you feel like what you were saying is up here, or would you like? Is there any words that you'd like me to modify? Or Brittany, did I come anywhere close to saying what you wanted to say? Or did what was written here come anywhere close to that? Is it big enough for you guys to see?
Yeah, I think it's fine.
Okay.
Looks good to me.
Okay. All right. Well, okay. So that's interesting. I mean, I want to write down that idea that is this, or are there two directions to the influence here? Laws between laws and morals. Okay. All right. Good. That's interesting. I mean, I'm hearing from you guys what I wanted to go over. All right. Is there a way to make countries and groups follow moral relativism in today's world? So by whoever wrote this question, maybe you can clarify, but I'm assuming that means make diverse countries and groups follow multiple or single moral relativism. Jasmine?
This was my question, and I didn't mean a single moral relativism. I just meant like not judging other people. For example, like America will invade countries under the premise that they shouldn't have enough like a dictatorship, but maybe that country wants a dictatorship and they don't want democracy, for example. So like, you know, in today's culture, can we stop people from necessarily judging other countries based on their, you know, moral code or socially acceptable behavior? So maybe not one moral code, but just, you know, relativism in general.
Okay, so it's basically, you know, can a diverse groups, you know, a mess of different kind of people respect a whole mess of different other kind of people, right? And so, but what you're asking, is there a way, is kind of interesting, because it's asking, like, is there one kind of standard of practice or process? Is there some process that can let everybody do this together? I mean, do we have any, what's the word? Do we have any candidates for this? Are there any candidates for an attempt at this? Go ahead, Alex.
I feel like the United Nations, in a way, they have a lot of different, not contracts, or maybe they could be considered contracts, but between all the countries, they try and get everyone to sign like I don't know exactly what they're called, but various points about like how you should treat kids or women, or against torture. And I feel like that those guidelines, since they're very, you know, they're tackling moral issues, are really kind of an attempt to get as many different countries, you know, from all around the world to sign on to these inherent beliefs. And I think that's definitely a start to adopting an entire moral code that is uniform.
Okay. So UN, I don't know if protocols is the right term, but yeah, I know there is a term for the statements on whatever. Yeah. Okay, so UN is one attempt. Is there any other informal or formal pressure that is put or input on the world? When something goes, when we hear of something that shakes our core a little bit, do we hear about it from the UN? what other institutions are there besides the UN? Go ahead, Alex.
Well, I think that what you made me think of is the media, I guess. And it seems as though, I mean, a lot of people believe that the media has an agenda. And I mean, I'm sure different sources, they're inherently biased. And I guess the way that they tackle the news, if they're not completely unbiased about it, will inherently reflect some of their morals within the reporting. Or not ideally, but unfortunately.
Okay. All right. But it isn't a neat process, but it's an input into this process. All right, what else do we have? And how else do you feel like you're influenced by? I mean, I'm trying to dig into our own lives here. Brittany?
I'm not sure if you wanted to go here yet, but I was just thinking why it wouldn't work.
Okay, sure.
Okay, so I think that the reason it won't work is because of moral relativism. And if you assume that people have these different beliefs, and I think one of the arguments for moral relativism is that there are universal values. I think that's the next question. And the only difference is the situations under which people are living, which is making them apply them differently. And so even if you could say you have to respect life and stuff, the different situations of the different countries will make it so that it will never be applied in the same way that you or that the UN or the different countries imagine it should be applied in. And so I think that when it doesn't affect someone, or when it doesn't affect you or your country, it has a better chance of working. If the United States is just looking and saying, hey, we don't like what you're doing, but at least it's not affecting us, that has the best chance of working. But certainly when other moral codes are being applied to justify actions that can harm your own country, or maybe not even harm, but just something that affects your own country, then I don't think there's any way to kind of come to a agreement there, because I think the fact of the matter is both people think they're right, and you're not going to.
Yeah, that's why they think it, right? Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think that's interesting. What you're saying is, when you're asking people what they think or why they think, or any of these variations on this moral code, values, statements, ethical explanation, anything along that spectrum, people are the first response is usually quite firm. People feel quite strong about it from the get-go. People. What did you just said? People usually think they're right. So, what you're asking, people tend to think they are right. So when you're asking somebody to step outside of that, you're displacing a kind of an ingrained attitude. I don't want to use any of those other words, whether it's values or morals or whatever, but you're trying to shift. You're trying to change a thought. It's rather like a paradigm shift, or what do they call it? A sea change. Okay. Looking at the clock here. Are there universal values like kindness, loyalty, and unity that can transcend? So, shall we say see above? I don't know do you feel like we've if we've left anything out of that? Jasmine?
I mean, well, I do understand Brittany's position that because people have different beliefs and different living conditions and we are usually thinking that we are right in our own beliefs, that we are less likely to believe them or, be accepting of them, that there probably are still universal values that despite beliefs or living conditions you can see. And like I feel like the stuff in the UN Charter about like what it like the primary or the like basic rights of human beings is like valued in most countries, most states, most political ideologies. So like even though there are differences that would impede that process and people tend to think they're right, I feel like there's like a basic fundamental level where everyone can agree.
Okay. Fundamentals. Okay. You know, and it's a spectrum. I mean, I'm sure that's what you've got. It's, you know, we're seeing like, you know, how far along. It's clearly not universal, but it's not without, and so there's somewhere on the spectrum there. Okay, so let's go back now to what if our definition of teleological theory. If moral relativism is a teleological theory and considers the consequence of an action, right? That's what we said it was. Teleological is like based, it is an explanation that is based on knowing what the purpose or consequence is, the outcome is. How can certain beliefs that include the harming of others still be accepted? So let me add another phrase to this question. Does this present an inherent an internal conflict? You know, a lot of times in this work, right, in this analysis, what we need to do is to find something that's internally inconsistent in the argument or the presentation. So, do you see hints of an inconsistency? Inconsistency. Do you see hints of an inconsistency there? You do. Does anybody need it? Does anybody need try to let's maybe the example was Nazism. But can we think of another one? Yeah, Alex?
I want to preface this by saying I'm stealing this from my friend Matthew, because I remember this is the first thing I thought of when we started studying this, because he loves playing like devil's advocate in this way. But he was he mentioned ISIS and how their morals, you know, they're like how we would view like really brutal, violent methods are, you know, awful and like senseless, right, like inhumane or whatever. But in their minds, it's justified because I'm not sure exactly what I don't remember exactly what the end goal of ISIS is, but I think they truly believe that the Islamic State, I think it's better that it's a worthwhile sacrifice to establish this Islamic State in the long term for most people. They aren't just senseless, inhuman. Yeah.
So that teleological justification or logical path, right, would be it's okay, even something that hurts someone is okay if our final goal is ends justifies it. How is that? I mean, it's sounding like ends justifies the means. Let me toss it back to Jasmine. She had her hand up.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that like death is a way to get to the end goal. So like the means justify the ends, essentially, or like the end justifies the means. Sorry.
Right. It's okay. Our brains are tired.
True.
Do you think that's what your friend had in mind, or that's what you had in mind when you were thinking about what your friend said, Alex?
Well, I was thinking about the duality of the moral systems and how we don't consider, or how I guess most people in America don't really consider the actions of ISIS as possibly well-intended, and that maybe because I don't think anyone anywhere would just think that killing for the act of killing would be good and justifiable, but unless you look at the consequences of the actions and how that plays into their moral justification of their means.
Okay. So I think it is ends justify the means. I mean, unless you consider the outcome, the later outcome of the actions. I mean, I think that is saying that. So it isn't necessarily internally inconsistent if we say that the ends justify the means. Right? It's sort of like, dang it, it's still okay, right? All right. All right. What is the background of this one? So I guess this one clearly needs some additional information. But does anybody have anything to add to this or any insight into this? Shall we do a quick search?
According to Wikipedia,
I'm not even on the bloody internet. Sorry. We don't have internet in this room today.
It says he was a teacher, and he taught virtue and political life.
Political lives?
Yeah, I don't know. It says he was also known as a teacher who addressed subjects connected to virtue and political life.
Okay, so you know what we should put up here? What does it mean? We should put up here as well. Political. Oops, capital letters, please. So what does it mean to be political? Politics. Look it up. Go ahead, Jasmine.
I was thinking that it's about governments interacting instead of necessarily like people or individuals. It's like just governments and countries interacting on that basis.
So what do we mean when we say, this term, the body politic? What does that mean?
Plato. No.
See, I can't. Somebody else has to do it. I can't. What's the body politic? Go ahead, Sam.
I have a definition. Doesn't say where it's from. It's just like the Google definition.
Right.
It says the people of a nation, state, or society considered collectively as an organized group of citizens. So. All
right. So what makes the political group different from a society is this idea of citizens. Right, and you could use you could say it could be a representative government, different types of government mean you're going to have different types of political structure. But it's still this idea of not our inclinations for what we think is beautiful or what we think is necessarily even ethical or moral, but what we choose to connect or what we have evolved in whatever system it is to connect based on our organizational scheme, our government scheme. And it might not even be a government. It could be some other kind of organizational scheme. We talk about the politics of, like a kindergarten classroom, right? or the politics of dating. There's sort of like, as members of this group, like what is the practices, the pro and con practices that are followed. And that's getting pretty darn close to this idea of what's socially acceptable, what are cultural practices. So I'm just saying this is a good example of how things are meshing together. So when you're using these terms, make sure you've defined what you mean by it, how you're using them, and what you think the implication is. Okay, let's go back down to the question. A teacher of virtue of the political, I guess I should say. What is the meaning of his name, and does it have anything to do with what he stated? So, if we know what he did, I mean, I can't. Again, I'm sorry. I don't want to try to change my Wi-Fi connections because I'm afraid what I'll end up doing is losing everything in the middle of class, and I don't want to do that. But so is there anything about like to be a protagonist? Yep. Go ahead, Jasmine.
Oh, sorry.
Whoever. Go ahead. You're on screen. Go ahead, Maddie.
That was like my initial reaction. That's why I asked the question, because I immediately thought of protagonist.
Mm-hmm. Is there any fact in that? I haven't looked it up, so I'm asking y'all. Jasmine?
I mean, protagonist comes from the Greek word protos, which means first. So maybe it's a pretty Greek name. So
right.
Might have just
okay, so we're just guessing. Yeah, as Maddie and I were guessing too. Okay, but we'll do a little bit more. So, perhaps he proposed things that were counter or a different interpretation, or purporting a certain interpretation, would be what a protagonist would do, right? Taking a certain direction. All right, and then we sort of started out with a little treatment of things like teleological theory. Okay, so did you find this essay useful? Did you find this way of like taking something short and kind of picking it apart useful? All right, so what I think you need to do now is you need to go home and study for your midterms. And I think everybody is going to be able to come on Wednesday. Is that true? Does anybody have an absolute conflict? Okay, so please do. Oh, are you raising your hand, Brittany?
I can't make it on Wednesday.
Okay, so Wednesday is the time when you're not here, and you and I have already consulted on this. Yeah. I will post the assignment for the long term, but I'll also be glad to we can even just do a Google chat or something if you still have more questions. But you're pretty good at asking questions across the email as well. Okay, so on Wednesday you'll get your kind of challenge for the long term, and we'll give some sort of length, etc. guidelines, sort of some outline issues that things which should be included. But I want the topic to be, I'll give you some suggestions, but I want you to feel free to go even outside of the suggestions for the topic. Like if you're particularly interested in, I don't know, ethics of, some issue that has arisen in sports, feel free to go that direction and use a case that we haven't studied before. But if you're feeling like, I don't really want to go out on a limb, I want to stay with something familiar, then you can also go back and revisit an old case that we have previously visited. Okay. All right. So, sounds good? Okay, so what are y'all taking tests on tomorrow? I just want to think good thoughts for you. So, tell me what you need to think good thoughts for you for. Alex, what do you got?
I have calc.
Okay, good luck in calc.
Oh.
Bye-bye, good luck. Okay, Sam, what do you got tomorrow?
I have AP US History.
Okay,
Ooh.
I'm thinking AP. I'm thinking dates. Jade.
AP Chem.
Okay. I'm thinking, equilibria.
Ugh.
Jasmine.
AP Microeconomics.
Oh my goodness. I didn't even know that existed. All right. Lots of graphs. Lots of graphs.
Oh gosh.
Alex, what are you doing?
I have an English
Alex.
paper due.
All right, go home and write that English paper. Brittany, good luck.
Thanks.
Do you have some for tomorrow or just Wednesday?
Philosophy tomorrow and
Okay.
linear algebra on Wednesday. Thanks.
Okay, good luck with it all. Yep. Maddie, you gonna be okay? What do you got to do?
I have an English paper. We don't have finals, so.
Okay, well, you write that same English. Are you writing the same English paper Alex is?
Yeah, we're talking
Okay.
about individualism and technology, so.
Okay,
I'm
go
actually
for it.
writing mine about individualism and medical technology. So I've
It
kind of
has
looked at
some.
stuff that's it's tied into this class kind of, so it's pretty interesting.
Good.
But
Good. All right. Take care of yourself. Good luck.
thank
See ya.
you.